Welcome to the Oracle Scroll. My name is Kevin Walder and I am your host, and I invite you to join my guests and myself as we discuss all things metaphysical. Thank you for joining us for episode 1 of the Oracle Scroll. First of all, what is the Oracle Scroll? Wow, that's a brain twist, if anything. In the fall of 2017, we began to talk to a few of our friends in the spiritual community about an idea we had entertained for some time and had not yet put into action. So the idea had several things working against it. In that nothing startlingly new or any new idea was actually being born. It was something that several talented individuals have done before with varying degrees of success. And at this point, none of them are still in print or in the publishing mode. So when we presented our idea, we received some encouraging responses, as is normal, but most were reservedly optimistic, I guess is the word. They weren't quite sure we had thought it out completely, and it turns out we hadn't. So we ultimately made the decision that it was just not ready for full implementation, and we decided to build support for the organization first, and then we'll go from there. We'll see if a print version is in the works, and we'll see what happens from there. This development was discouraging sometimes. Anybody out there, any of you who have created something, whether it's art or writing a book or even designing a home, all those things, those creations become your children. And boy, we jealously guard our children. We just don't take any chances with their safety. So it was a real challenging shift for us to abandon, basically, some of the key elements of the project. But as things have progressed, we have become actually quite excited about the new possibilities, and this podcast is one of those. Some years ago, a very wise teacher told me that she had learned the hard way that in the spiritual community, we have all the same problems that the community at large would have. The only difference, as she stated it, was some of us know what's wrong with us. And I have carried that with me for a long time, because in our spiritual community, we have a lot of strength. We have a tremendous amount of talent. We have an immense amount of empathy and compassion for the most part. But there are those areas and those pockets where everyone feels justified, perhaps. Everyone feels vindicated, maybe, in treating others in a less than respectful way. So one of the things that this podcast is aimed at doing is promoting understanding. Why do you believe the way you believe? Why do you assert the things that you assert? Those are going to be the questions that we're trying to answer. And I emphasize questions. Questions are exactly what makes our world move and tick. We cannot ever assume that we know everything. And if we do reach that point, we're a big danger to ourselves and everyone around us. So compassion for our fellow beings is especially necessary now that our world is becoming such an angry place, such an unforgiving place. We rightly expect more from ourselves and our traveling companions on this road, since we hope to be shining examples of spirit and spirit doing its best work. There are times when the most well-meaning of us pass judgment on someone we deem to be less than. While we can be forgiven for our human failing, it does not excuse us from pursuing a higher understanding. We're all humans. And so we have that inherent feeling sometimes that we're superior, but we're not. Not at all. Not by a long shot. We are all connected. We are all at some point on the same level. Even though you may consider yourself to be enlightened and you may consider yourself to be someone who is above it all, take my word for it. You're not. And neither am I. And neither are any of us who are striving to become more enlightened, to become more spiritually centered in our lives. We've often had mention of terrorism in our news and even lately, terrorist activities that are not being identified as terrorist activities because they can be explained away some other way. But I wrote something about terrorism a while back, and it basically goes back to what I'm just saying. Fundamentalism is the basis and core of terrorism. It's as simple as that. The belief that you are superior, the belief that you have a connection to a universe, a spirit, a God, however you wish to identify that being, that is the groundwork upon which terrorism grows. Now, not all of you that are embracing a fundamentalist view are going to take up arms and begin to wreak havoc on those around you. But if you're praying for the destruction of a person, an institution, a situation that would involve people surrounding you, isn't that really the same thing? It's made sense to me that rather than the biblical explanation that we've always been given about our gods, whatever God you may choose to name in this space, that the logical explanation is that mankind was not created by a God in the image of a God, but in fact, mankind created the gods, became the creator of the gods. This awakening continues, and I continue to grow in understanding that though we have many differences in ideology, theology, even personal taste when it comes to a God. So we're not self-appointed judges of anyone. We can't afford to be self-appointed judges of anyone or any group, no matter what political treatise or holy book we may embrace. And I was raised in a toxic environment like this. I was raised in a fundamentalist atmosphere, a fundamentalist environment, surrounded by people and ideologies that focused on pointing out our differences, finding fault with everyone around you. Everyone around you was on the wrong path, and it was our duty to save them from their wrong path. Well, this is really what causes problems in our world. No one is on the wrong path. In fact, maybe there isn't a wrong path. Maybe there isn't a right path. Maybe there's just your path, my path, their path, and everyone else's path. However they may choose it, everyone is on a different path. So you hear the hateful comments and condemnations of various religions, nationalities, ethnic groups. These aren't based in fact, but they echo the popular rhetoric which espouses violence to combat violence and will target many innocent lives. Listen carefully to the words of our chosen politicians and religious leaders, do they consistently call for the annihilation of fellow humans they consider to be less favored by their peers or, their God? Do they work to deny basic human rights to those considered by their ideology or theology to be sinful or otherwise unworthy of life itself? If these are the people that we support with our money, our time, and philosophical admiration, how big a leap is it then? Seriously, think about this. How big a leap is it then from just waiting patiently for military action or a spirit power to slay our enemies and everyone that doesn't agree with our path? How big a leap is it then from that position to one of actually taking the ultimate unilateral action ourselves? Basic attitudes are the same. You don't have to change anything at your core in order to become that literal figure of terrorism. So what can you expect from the Oracle Scroll as we move forward into the future? Well, as the vision goes, I have a few things that I definitely want to do and definitely don't want to do. First of all, I don't know about most of the rest of you, but I have an attention span that can focus so precisely for about 20 minutes. And then after that, I start to lose it. So I am trying to keep these podcasts to a maximum of about 30 minutes, including everything, all the sections that I want to include. Ultimately, we will be discussing anything on a metaphysical level, any form of practice, any form of healing or reading or consultation that may be involved, even art. So there's plenty of room for all of the talent that we have in our community to come forward and to be interviewed for a spot on this podcast. Anyone who knows me knows that my main focus is the tarot. I enjoy working with the tarot and have done so for about 20 years now. And it is a very, it's constantly changing. It's constantly expanding. It's constantly growing. So there's a lot that we can learn in consulting the tarot. And so that's what I hope to bring to this format, to this podcast. I wish to also have some individual readings available. So those of you who are so inclined, if you wish to send in a question or a situation that you need some guidance and direction, please send it to the Oracle Scroll at gmail.com. And I will put it on the podcast. I will, without your name, of course. You can camouflage yourself any way you like. The idea is to just give you an example and give you a sample of the tarot and how it works and how its advice, even though it's an ancient system, is still very applicable in our daily lives today and can be used in our daily lives today. So that's what I want to accomplish for the tarot. Beyond that, I also must say that I have a continuing admiration for the Dalai Lama and his message of compassion and empathy. And I want to promote that. That is what the Oracle Scroll is actually designed to do, is to promote compassion and empathy within our world, all of our world, not just our isolated little community that we're quite proud of it. But anyway, we want to make sure that we have that opportunity. We give everyone the opportunity. So I have a prayer that I had written many, many years ago that pretty much sums up what it is that we want to accomplish with the oracle scroll. And the prayer goes as follows. May I always seek to be a beacon of universal peace. When I encounter division, let me bring unity. Where I see selfishness, let me demonstrate selflessness. When I witness sadness, let me bring joy. When I witness despair, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, let me bring light. Grant me the wisdom to know that only by giving can I receive. Only by understanding can I be understood. Only by forgiving can I be forgiven. Only by loving can I be loved. And only by letting go of the need for life itself can I be truly alive. I found those words to be quite inspiring, quite potent. They were a guidance for us for a long while, and when we were doing the Mystical Winds events, they were extremely wonderful opportunities for us to demonstrate and have demonstrated the compassion and the empathy that is our community. Since I work with tarot most of all, I usually fall back on that as my reference point, but this could be applied to any spiritual practice. And basically it revolves around why. In this case, why do we seek advice from the tarot? You could also expand that to why do we pray? Why do we seek advice of any oracle that may be out there? So, and I received lots of different answers to that question. Why? Why do we seek the advice of the tarot? Why do we pray? Why do we ask? To get answers is the number one answer. Or to get a different perspective. Maybe number 2 or 3. These are both valid. They're both honest. But did they really get the point? In my opinion, obtaining answers is not the best use of the tarot, or any other form of divination for that matter. Obtaining answers is easy. What happens when you get the answer to a question that you've been, oh my goodness, you've been agonizing over for so long, and finally you get the answer? Well, we accept the answer. And we probably forget the answer. And we forget the question that we started with because now we've got it answered. It's no longer a problem. We don't need to worry about it anymore. We don't have to think about that situation. It's done. We can go home now, watch TV, play video games, whatever it is that is our time filler of choice. I believe that the best use of the tarot is not to get answers, or even to get a different perspective. Though those particular avenues are met, you definitely will get answers and you will definitely get different perspectives. But I think that a higher use for the tarot is to improve our question. The tarot is an excellent tool to spur our thinking, stimulate us to action. When we are in the midst of a situation, we may feel we have defined our question based on our subjective view, but the tarot may actually open our minds to a new and much more pertinent question than the one we've been asking. And it encourages us to continue to work through that question or those questions. Maybe it's not as simple as a single question. So think about that for a moment. If you think of tarot as your tool to redefine your question, and redefine your quest so that you are continuing to work and continuing to strive to improve. Isn't that a higher calling than just getting an answer? And oftentimes, the answer will come wrapped in such a lot of camouflage that you may not recognize it to begin with. You may have to take a few moments to peel away the layers and then, oh, there it is. All of a sudden. So the next time you consult the tarot or consult a tarot consultant, approach it from the standpoint of defining your question with a view to walking away with a much better, more profound, more pertinent question that will lead you to better decisions as you go forward. Why did we choose podcasting as our means of broadcasting to you? First of all, I looked at internet radio shows, and they're great, simple, easy to interact with each other on most platforms, but they tend to have a very limited shelf life, where a podcast is forever. They get archived immediately, and they can be referred to in the future or shared with friends. They're around. So I kind of tended toward the podcasting idea simply because it has longevity. And most of what we're talking about, while some things are going to be current events, and so they will have some time frame that mentions, but other than that, most of what we're talking about is timeless. It's there. It's ready for anyone to consume, to come back and check it out. We also want to have that option, as I mentioned earlier, about sending in your question so that we can give you a short 3-card reading as a part of the podcast. So if you are so inclined, you may do so, and we would encourage you to do so. We will not use any identifying information, any names or anything like that. We'll make it very easy for you to get your answer without broadcasting your situation. Send your questions and comments to theoraclescroll@gmail.com. And we will sort through them and see what we can make work for us and work for you, basically. The idea is not to focus on any one individual, perhaps, but to give some guidance that may actually, someone else may be needing it. So it's important to talk about where we are in life and the challenges we are experiencing and so forth, so that we can offer assistance and guidance to other people. That's one thing about the tarot that I have noticed is when I do an event, I often will do what I sometimes say, it's the same reading over and over again all day long. That is not uncommon because we have so many people that are dealing with very similar problems and very similar issues. So when we encounter them at an event, then it seems that everybody who's working on that seems to gravitate to that particular reader. And I find that interesting, humorous at times. There are times when it's a little annoying because you end up giving a very heavy and not a real pleasant, uplifting kind of reading, and that can get old after a while. So this brings us to the end of episode 1. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening to the podcast today, and please share it with your friends and let everybody know that this podcast now exists and is ready to be received. So I appreciate your assistance and your help. And this community is so vibrant and so full of life. We don't often recognize individuals And that's one other avenue that we wish to pursue, is to understand and recognize the people around us, because a community is a collection of individuals, and each of them has to shine just as brightly as the next. And that's an important part of what we do as a community. As a community, we're only as good as our least sparkly person. So, and I say that with tongue in cheek, but we are, as a community, we need to accent and highlight the achievements and the abilities, the talents of everyone who works within this community with us. And that, I guess, if I was going to wrap it up in a nutshell, that is the purpose of the Oracle Scroll. How would you like to get your name in the Oracle Scroll? If you're interested in becoming a guest on the show, I will enjoy talking to you anytime about that. Another neat thing about the podcast as opposed to radio show is there's no time frame that we have to fit within. We can actually do your interview anytime that's convenient for you and me, and we can put it together and fill in the podcast around your interview. So it's very simple, very easy, and we'll make it as enjoyable as possible. And who doesn't enjoy talking about themselves and talking about their work? If we're excited about our work, we want to spread the word. So welcome again to the Oracle Scroll, and thank you so much for joining us for episode 1. Keep an eye out for episode 2, coming soon. Bye. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Oracle Scroll. Find us on Facebook at the Oracle Scroll. If you wish to send comments, suggestions, or requests, please address them to theoraclescroll@gmail.com.